Hello, welcome to a new episode of Triple Threat Sports. And today's topic, the woeful New York Knicks. As of today, this is December 3rd, 2013. The New York Knicks are 3-13. That's 3 wins, 13 losses, losers of 9 straight, and it's ugly. The coach could be on his way out, Mike Woodson. In fact, Thursday could be his last game if they lose to the Nets in Brooklyn, which a good chance they will. So whenever a team is in dire straits like this, it's always good to analyze how they got to the situation they're in and how they can improve it. Let's look back at the last 5 years of Knicks basketball quickly. In 2008, Isaiah Thomas is finally let go by his good friend James Dolan. Donnie Walsh is hired to be the president of the Knicks. Mike D'Antoni is brought in as the head coach. And it looks like things are on the up. They deliberately tank 2 seasons of basketball in an effort to get under the salary cap. Back then, there was the whole idea LeBron James was going to be a free agent, other people would be free agents, and the Knicks would free up cap space and sign them. Well, as it turned out, LeBron James did not want to come here. He wanted to go to Miami. That was planned. Him and Chris Bosh and Wade, and that whole thing. And look what happened after them. The Knicks signed the Maurice Stoudemire, and this was in July 5th, 2010. So this is the 3rd year of the Donnie Walsh era. The Knicks bring in Stoudemire, and if you remember back to that time, and as Knicks fans we should, Maurice Stoudemire really took the city by storm. He received a max contract, a 5-year contract, worth about $100 million. And the first couple of months, he really took over the city. He was having a possibly MVP year. And then right at the midpoint of that season, the Carmelo Anthony trade came on. That was on February 22nd, 2011. So Stoudemire came in. The season starts in November. By February, Anthony was here. They traded basically the whole team to get him. He traded Gallinari and Mozgov and Chandler. And at the time, it was seen as a good trade. He signed a 3-year deal, plus the 3 more years after the extension. The Knicks made the playoffs for the first time in years. They didn't win a playoff game. They were swept by Boston, so that streak kept going on. But they did make the playoffs for the first time in about 5 or 6 years. And it felt pretty good. The next year was sort of a crazy year. D'Antoni was fired. The Jeremy Lin phenomenon came on, and Lin kind of came and went. Again, they made the playoffs the following year. And again, they lost in the first round to the Heat. They might have been a better team. If they didn't play the Heat in the first round, they might have won a round or two and lost to the Heat eventually. But they did lose to the Heat. And last year, they bring in Jason Kidd. They bring in some other older guys. Who did they bring in? Who else is on there?
They brought back Felton.
Felton was brought back as part of the Anthony trade. What were the tattoos? Kenyon Martin.
Martin.
They brought in Kenyon Martin. They won 54 games last year. They finally won a playoff round for the first time since really the Van Gundy era. Not really, since the Van Gundy era. That was all the way back at the turn of the century. And now they're 3-13. So what happened? Or how did they get into this state, basically? Well, Jason Kidd retired and that kind of stuff. But there was a couple of crucial things that have come out of the last few years that might have been overlooked at the time, at least somewhat overlooked at the time. Remember, there was a lockout in the NBA right after if the Knicks traded for Carmelo Anthony, which is actually the reason why they had to make that trade, because Anthony was concerned that the lockout was going to come and then the contracts were going to be limited more, and he wanted to sign his contract before the lockout. So that's how the Knicks ended up having to trade him. They could have waited till the season was over normally to sign him as a free agent if he wanted to come to the Knicks. But they had to make that trade. Anyway, part of the new CBA that came out of the lockout was each team was giving an amnesty clause. It was an amnesty clause in that CBA that allowed each team to amnesty one contract that they currently had on their books. Now, right at that time, Amaro Stoudemire, who again was very popular, still at that time was very popular. He started to go downhill a little bit, his reputation after that Celtics series in the first playoff series. He was injured. He put his hand through a fire extinguisher in the locker room. So he was starting to fade a little bit in New York. But again, for a while that season, he was really the prince of the city. And it was going into that contract, even when he was given that 5-year contract, his knees were always questionable. He had a number of knee injuries and eye injuries. He was always injury prone. And there were questions when he signed the contract if he was going to be able to actually play for 5 years at a high level, or anything close to a high level. The Knicks chose to amnesty Chauncey Billups, who was part of the. He wasn't that good for the Knicks, but he was part of the deal. He was a throw-in deal with Anthony. He made a lot of money that season, and they had another season he was going to make a lot of money, but then he had a shorter contract. The Knicks chose to amnesty that contract and keep Stoudemire. And a better way to go would have definitely been, actually, in hindsight is obvious, they should have amnestied Stoudemire's contract. There was talk at that time, the same way LeBron James went to Miami and he joined up with Chris Bosh and Wade was already there, that the Knicks were going to have a similar situation with Stoudemire, Anthony, and Chris Paul. Now, that didn't happen. Chris Paul always said he wanted to come to the Knicks, though. And if they would have amnestied Billups, if they would have amnestied, they would not have amnestied Billups. If they would have amnestied Stoudemire's contract, even though he would have been gone, they still would have had more. They ended up signing Tyson Chandler, who actually won Defensive Player of the Year last year. The first year was with the Knicks. If they would have amnestied right now, Stoudemire, the last 2 years, Stoudemire has been nowhere near the player he was, and he has another year after this year. This year he's bad, and next year he's still on a team with big money. Again, not the player he once was, not even close, not even starting, playing 20 minutes a night maybe. In hindsight, that was a bad contract to bring Stoudemire in. Even no matter what excitement he created, even if he motivated Anthony to come here, it was a bad contract. They should have amnestied that contract. They could have had a better chance to sign Chris Paul, even having signed Tyson Chandler. They had a chance to sign Chris Paul if he wanted to come here. Not guaranteed, but that would have been a better way to go. Now, right now, again, the team is 3-13, and there was another nugget that was part of the Carmelo Anthony trade. Is that this year they traded, as part of the Anthony trade 3 years ago, they traded their first round pick of this coming up draft, 2014's draft. They traded it to the Denver Nuggets as part of that deal. Now, this year's draft, and you couldn't really know it at the time, 3 years ago, but this year's draft is shaping up to be the deepest draft in years. Andrew Wiggins out of Kansas, he's slated to become the next elite NBA star. He's projected to come, but he's very good. There's Randall out of Kentucky. There's a player out of Duke that could be a superstar. And the Knicks don't have a pick. Now, there's actually a chance, and hopefully it doesn't come to this, that the Knicks get into the lottery. They don't make the playoffs this year. They continue that bad season. And Tyson Chandler's been injured. Maybe he comes back and maybe they make the playoffs. The Eastern Conference is terrible. They can still get into the playoffs. Not that they're going to do anything in the playoffs, but they could get in there at least and avoid the lottery. There's that. Let's say they don't. Let's say they continue. They actually get into the lottery. There's actually a chance that they can actually get a top 5 pick in this deep draft and not have a pick. And the pick goes to Denver as part of the Anthony trade. And the Knicks miss out. That's a possibility. That would be dreadful, by the way. So, what should the Knicks do? If you look at it honestly and you assess it honestly, it's hard to imagine in the Carmelo Anthony. Now, Carmelo Anthony is also a free agent at the end of this year, too, keep in mind. But the Knicks can, if they want to, according to the CBA rules, your team that you're on can pay you more than other teams can if you're a free agent in the NBA. It's really hard to see the Knicks making any moves. This year they brought in Bagnani. They made a trade. They brought in a former number 1 draft pick, Bagnani, but he's not going to make that much of a difference. It's really hard to imagine the Knicks in the current epoch, so to speak, of the next few years being able to defeat either the Miami Heat or the Indiana Pacers in a playoff series. You can't see it happen. There's no realistic move they can make. I think it's time to go in the other direction. I think it's time to absolutely trade, and I said this 6 months ago, and I say it again. It's time for the Knicks to trade Carmelo Anthony. There were teams that would take him, and now that would have the two. Ideally, and it's again, there's credits to it. You can get a first round pick for him and replace the pick that you traded to Denver with. The trouble there is the way the NBA is, the way the sport is. If the next trade Carmelo Anthony to another team, even a losing team, he might make the team just better enough to get into the playoffs, and maybe you avoid that. Maybe your pick isn't that good anyway. But still, you still like to at least try to get a first round pick for him. But you can also get some young talent. The Cleveland Cavaliers would take him, I think. He could play with Kyle Irvin, who would be the best player he ever played with. They have some young pieces to bring back. LeBron James is not going back there. The ownership there might want a superstar there just to make up for the fact that LeBron James left and he's not coming back. They might want, he can fit well. Maybe the Magic. The point is, you can bring back young talent. You can get cap flexibility. Right now, this year and next year, the Knicks have no flexibility. Stoudemire's on the books. No one's going to take him. Anthony, if they re-sign him, would be on the books. Chandler's on the books. If the team is losing now, next year stands to reason you can't make any big moves. They're going to lose next year. They can't improve that much with the moves that they can realistically make. You trade Anthony, you rebuild the team. Again, you're not really close to a title unless you happen to win the lottery and you draft the Wiggins or the next great player. Then you're in good shape going forward. But the idea, young talent and flexibility. Anthony's a good player. He won a scoring title last year. He's been fun to watch for the Knicks, but there's not enough talent. The Knicks are not going to be able to put enough talent around him to win a championship. And it's about winning championships. I say you rebuild a team, you trade Anthony, break it down, young talent, cap space, and in 2015, maybe you have something. The plan now for the Knicks vision now is we sign Anthony, wait 2 years, and get. Right now, the Knicks are thinking that realistically we can't win a title this year. Next year the same thing. We'll have the same team. They're targeting the following year, 2015, when they figure they'd have resigned Anthony and they have cap space after the Chandler contract and the Stoudemire contract are finally gone to bring in a guy like Kevin Love to play with Anthony and go forward from there. Again, it's hard to see it happening. Kevin Love has a nice team in Minnesota with a budding star, Rubio at point guard, a good center. It's unlikely that he would, I think, come here and be second fiddle to Anthony. Again, better, I think, to break it up now and go forward from this point. Break it up now, sell Anthony up to the highest bidder, get some young talent, get some cap flexibility, and be ready for a time when the Heat and the Pacers and the Lakers and these teams, let this approach pass and be ready for the next one. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leonel SL Ray, and I approve this message.